Hello there my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And today, we've got some Star Wars movie news, and it comes in the form of the return of Rian Johnson, who's been talking quite a lot about Star Wars in the last few days. So I want to cover what he said, but I don't want this video to devolve into a classic Why I Hate The Last Jedi kind of video. You guys know my thoughts on Episode 8, the portrayal of Luke, some of the themes explored, why the movie didn't resonate with so much of the fandom, and I don't want to tread old ground. I want to stay focused on Rian Johnson's words. He's touched on some important topics, and reflecting in ways I've not seen from him in the past. So he talks about The Last Jedi, but also his upcoming trilogy. And I'm going to give you my take, no BS, no jibber jabber, just what I think, plain and simple. So let's dive straight in. These comments come from his appearance at Newport Beach, and we begin with his take on the modern Star Wars fandom, which as we know, has never been more divided. And it isn't just the modern shows, Ahsoka, The Acolyte. Many would argue the source of all of the recent apathy towards Disney Star Wars originates with the sequel trilogy. And more than the others, Episode 8, Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. So, in many ways he contributed to that division. And not just with the movie itself, but the way he composed himself on social media, the way other Lucasfilm employees spoke to fans. I'm not talking about back in the day controversies like with the Ewoks or the prequel trilogy. I'm talking about the more recent backlash. But Rian's response is pretty eyebrow-raising. And honestly, I vehemently disagree with him. He thinks that the fandom not being united is, quote, just part of the fun. I'm sorry, part of the fun? I can't imagine this mindset where you yourself are a Star Wars fan and you like the current state of things. The vitriol, the apathy, and his full quote is this: the notion that Star Wars has been this kind of Shangri-La united fandom and that nothing could split them apart is false. The reality is that Star Wars has always been something that means different things to different folks, and the passion of it, as fans, is arguing about it respectfully. Now on this last part, Rian is absolutely right. I love fan debates, I love when we have different opinions, I love when we can talk about theories, and one person says, well, what if this scenario, and the other one says, no, you're wrong for this reason or this reason. Absolutely. When it comes to respectful fan discourse, it is part of the fun. But when he's talking about the fandom being split, while it is true that no two Star Wars fans can agree on anything, he's kind of just sweeping under the rug how bad things have gotten. There's a difference between being passionate and coming from a place of love for the franchise, wanting it to be better, and the flat-out nastiness where people tear each other down. And more often than not, it becomes about real-life politics. Oh, you're one of them. No, you're one of us. The minute you like something Disney Star Wars, you're a shill. And they put you in compilations, they edit your face or your voice, and yes, both things have happened to me. And if you dislike something, you're automatically toxic. But what I'm saying is, the origin of this recent environment can be traced back to the sequel era, and there was a sharp turn around Episode 8. So for Rian to pretend that all fan division is good and it's done in good faith, I'm sorry, but that's just not the case. Has he taken a look around at the way things have been since The Last Jedi? As a content creator, I can tell you there is a big difference, and the ugly side of it is not just part of the fun. And I guess my big frustration with Rian, and again, I'm trying to avoid just going down the whole bashing The Last Jedi route, is that this isn't the first time he's spoken about loving division. I remember when The Last Jedi came out, and the fan backlash followed, and there were lots of video reviews and fans were really pissed, and there was this one old clip of Rian circulating all over the internet. It was from long before he worked on Star Wars, and basically, he said something to the effect of, when he makes a film, he wants half the audience to hate it and half to love it. He's invigorated by this idea that his movies and his art are divisive. And I remember thinking, well, is it really fair to bring this up in the context of Episode 8? Because Rian made those comments years ago. They didn't come from his press tour for The Last Jedi. They had nothing to do with Star Wars or his recent movies. And so, I wondered if in this regard, we should give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe with The Last Jedi he wasn't intending to be divisive. But there was even imagery embedded in the film itself that showed division. The Holdo maneuver, the splitting of the lightsaber, the focus on the yin and yang approach to the Force. And so we had to figure on some level as a filmmaker, he still held that approach. Well, to my mind, this brand new interview solidifies that. He really seems enamored with the idea that fans are divided. And I get it to some extent. Of course, Star Wars fans have their different opinions, their different factions. There have always been original trilogy purists, Those who go even further and discard the special editions, there are prequel fans, even sequel fans, expanded universe elitists, Star Wars literature fans. I could go on and on. There have always been little splinter groups, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about irreparable damage. I personally always have hope in Star Wars. I want the brand to thrive, but there are absolutely fans out there who are just done. And more than ever, fans who assert that as long as Star Wars is owned by Disney, it's over. And to me, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. It's saying, meh, I don't even have the passion to care enough anymore. And as a content creator, I've seen the ups and downs of this, but there always seems to be this underlying wound, and I do think you can trace the origins of that to around 2017. And I know there has always been controversy in this fandom, but there have always been threads that keep us united. Even original trilogy fans who hated the prequels. Many of them still liked the characters, or saw what George Lucas was trying to do. Another thing you often hear is that Revenge of the Sith is good, but they dislike The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Maybe part of this is the way things are amplified by social media, but you get the sense 10 years after The Force Awakens that things have only gotten worse. Faith in Lucasfilm hasn't been restored, maybe it needs more time, and maybe the Ben Solo situation is starting to do this, but a decade on, the sequels haven't had the renaissance that the prequel trilogy has. And like I say, it's not as respectful as Rian Johnson makes it out to be. But I think we've spent enough time on this first point, let's move on to his next comment. Rian then talks about his trilogy and says it would be the most wonderful thing in the world, but the reason he hasn't come back, he claims, has nothing to do with the Last Jedi backlash. You see, I have a hard time believing this. In light of recent revelations about Bob Iger, Alan Bergman and Disney, had The Last Jedi been beloved, the fandom over, Rian would already be at least one movie into his trilogy by now. From the sounds of things, he wants to return, Kathleen Kennedy wants him to return, he's using the excuse of his Knives Out trilogy, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if the decision was down to Disney and the mouse simply said no. Now, The Last Jedi on paper was a success, and the anticipation for Luke's return was at an all-time high in 2017. So while fans paid to see Episode 8, it's the reception to it, the reviews, the fan reviews, especially because the critics loved it, that really marks the downturn. But he still defends his movie, and says, quote, I've talked to so many people over the years, since we made that movie, who have such deep connections to Star Wars, and who have deep connections to that film. I came out at the end of the experience, loving Star Wars fandom more than I did going into it. And there are definitely fans who say it's as good as The Empire Strikes Back. Rian Johnson remains unapologetic. He loves the movie he made. It definitely had some ideas which I think could have worked in a what-if scenario. If you think about Star Wars Infinities, The Last Jedi would be perfect in an alternate version of events. It's a visually spectacular movie, some of the visuals are amazing, the cinematography is decent, but I think when all is said and done, if you ask your average person who didn't like the film, it all comes down to the way they handled Luke. So let's move on to Rian's final comment. Again, talking about his trilogy, he says, quote, that cog will always be turning the rest of my life. If someday it makes sense to come back, I'd be down. It would be the most wonderful thing in the world. And mark my words, you might not like this. Don't be surprised if Rian Johnson returns to direct a Star Wars project that isn't part of his trilogy. I say this because we know he asked Dave Filoni to direct an episode of The Mandalorian, and word on the street, at least that's what a couple of rumors are saying, is that he might return to direct an episode of something. I don't think Rian is entirely detached from Star Wars, but I have a feeling that's Disney's decision. Because after The Last Jedi, Kathleen Kennedy was still very much hoping he would return. But what do you think? Should Rian Johnson come back to Star Wars, or do you want him to keep his distance? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, my dear friends. And if you enjoyed this one, as always, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and may the Force be with you, always.